let's first start with quick round of introductions. Why, just your name, where are you dialing in from, and what do you do? Liz, would you like to go first?
Sure. Thanks, Mugda. My name is Liz Haynes. I'm calling in from Chennai, and I'm the founder of an NGO called Transformational Sports, and we work towards gender equality using co-ed sports here in India. Nice to meet you, Dr. Neeta.
Why don't you pick on someone, Liz?
Cherry, you want to go?
Hi everyone, I'm Cherry, and I was born and raised in Hyderabad. As growing up, I was really interested in swimming, and that is a sport that I know really well. Apart from that, I also learned basketball. But currently, I graduated from a master's last year from the George Washington University, and I pick on Akash.
नमस्ते डॉक्टर नीता। मैं आकाश हूँ। मैं अभी सिरक्यूज से डायल इन कर रहा हूँ और मैं प्रोफेशन से केमिकल इंजीनियर हूँ, बट स्पोर्ट्स खेलना मेरे को बहुत पसंद है। एंड आई ट्रांसफर टू मुग्धा।
Thanks everyone for the quick introductions. I think every one of us has read a little bit about Dr. Neeta Tatke, but just for the sake of the session, let me introduce her formally as well. So Dr. Neeta Tatke is the Vice Principal and Head of Department at DG Ruparel College in Mahim, Mumbai. But more so, she is a student of Sri Samartha Vyayam Mandir Dadar since the age of 7 and has learned Malkham from her coach, Sri Uday V. Deshpande, who is a recipient of Shiv Chhatrapati Lifetime Achievement Award. Dr. Tatke has done her PhD in sports psychology, and her thesis is titled Emotional Intelligence, Executive Function and Explanatory Style as a Function of Participation in Competitive Malkham. Dr. Tatke has very graciously agreed to speak to us today to talk more about Malkham and her journey with it as well. So without further ado, Neeta Tai, I would request you to start the session with talking a little bit more about Malkham and your journey with it.
I had not unmute. Okay. Sorry, there is one question which I want to ask. Now, do you want me to speak for how long, or you would be asking me questions? I'm really sorry.
No problem. So we are going to have a question answer session, but you might feel free to take, if you want to take 5 minutes to 7 minutes to answer a question, that's absolutely fine. So it's according to your convenience, but we do have a set of questions for you.
Okay. Yeah, I start again. So, namaste. I'm Dr. Neeta Tatke. My educational qualifications are in the field of psychology, but my passion is Malkham. And my journey started, yes, at a very young age, when I was about 6-7 years old. When I was put into Sri Samartha Vyayam Mandir, Dadar, Mumbai, by my father, who himself was a student of this institution and who was also a good Kho player and later a teacher too. My, sort of immediately clicked. I would love to come to Vanshala every evening. And at that time, we did not have a Malkham for girls. So, we, a bunch of students would spend the time playing various games. At that time, I also got interested, that was one training which was given in the Vanshala, Indian martial arts. So, Lathi, Kathi, Jambiya, Farigatka. And then one evening, I remember we were all in the assembly, and where my coach, Shri Uday Deshpande sir, he came. He was a collegian then. And he asked, would anyone like to learn Malkham? So hardly knowing what it involved, we were a few girls who said yes, and then we started it. So at that time, it was not the rope malkham which you see now, which is also a competitive thing where girls practice. But at that time, there were canes, and these canes would be dipped in water. They were long canes, about 5 feet, and soft and very thin. The cane, otherwise, which is used to make furniture, or the stick, cane stick. And I loved doing it. Probably it allowed me to climb up and down, to be ulta sulta, jo bhi hum kuch bolte hai, variety of aerial positions. And see, malkham is a sport where initially it's challenging because it hurts. You are working against gravity, which is not easy. You have to pull your body, so your body hurts, your shoulders hurt. You have to grip your at that time we started with cane, so cane, now the rope in your toe, so the toe hurts. But once that initial pain is gone, you really enjoy being there on the air, seeing the world from the top. And I think I started enjoying it. My parents were very supportive. They wanted myself and my brother was also in the Vamshala, although he did not continue. He was more into academics then too. But learning was fun. I also learned yoga side by side. I also learned gymnastics. And one condition of the parents was your studies should be good, then we don't mind anything. And then we started performing demonstrations. We started reaching out to people. Mine was the first batch in Samartha, girls batch doing Malkham. Mine was also one of the first few students who did Malkham in India, the girls. And so I started teaching, and I realized performance was also fun and teaching was also fun. So I think there the journey began.
Neeta, thank you for sharing this. And it's very interesting. I learned about Malcolm only a couple of months ago while I was researching for the FEMPAD film. So it's really interesting to hear you speak from a perspective of an athlete, from a perspective of someone who's been doing this since you were 6 or 7 years old. Really interesting. So, Neeta, what are some of your unlearnings while you were training and learning Malcolm?
My unlearnings. If
Or
you're saying,
sorry.
yeah, sorry.
Unlearning
Yeah,
life lessons.
yeah. First major lesson is you can be comfortable in the air, and the world looks beautiful from there. A variety of reasons. Yes, you get a different perspective. I living in Mumbai, where 50 years ago, also having grounds and having places to play was a luxury. And then watching someone when you are about 5, 6, 7 feet from the ground, it gives a different perspective. What I realized was one of my major unlearning was where my coach used to always tell that your fear will not go, but you have to work in spite of your fear. So, that is what I learned. And that helped me in my learning of psychology, because in psychology also, what happens many a times is when we are tensed, people generally tell you, hey, don't get tensed, you will be able to do it well. But it is not that easy. So, you are going to get tensed. So you have to perform in spite of your fears, in spite of your anxieties. One major learning which I also had in my learning of Malkham was, see, initially, you take a pole, it's 8 feet in height. You sit on the top of the pole. You feel you have achieved so much. It's so great. You have one small achievement. And once you are able to sit comfortably on that pole top, you are told to stand on that pole top. So, your fear, your worry, your stress, everything comes back. So you always know, when you are in this sport, that there is one more challenge ahead you. So, a never stop attitude which my sport developed. Later on, my research told me that when you are in sport, you generally learn this persistence. Yes, I learned it through Malkham very fast. And as I was sharing you, Malkham initially is painful. It bruises you. It hurts you. Later on, as you start doing difficult moves, uh, uh, you have to have a kind of focus. My sport taught me that, which is not a learning which we easily get. And my major unlearning was don't restrict yourself. The society, the culture, especially for girls, it tells don't do this, don't do that, don't wear shorts. Your shorts are too short. I learned in this process, we need not restrict ourselves. Within specific limits, within good limits, you can excel. I like your question. I had never thought in these terms, what Malkham made me unlearn. Thank you so much.
Neeta, you alluded a bit about women's participation in Malkham at your time. Yours was the first batch which actually started Malkham, girls Malkham at the Vyamshara. So can you speak a little bit about history of women's participation in Malkham?
Yes. See, Malkham has a very interesting story. Okay, the origin of this modern Malkham, although you get the mention of Malkham in earlier scriptures, you get some information where Lord Krishna had taught Malla Vidya to wrestlers, which is climbing the pole in one Kapal Kuruntak Yoga, which is again an ancient book. You have descriptions in Sanskrit shlokas where, people, there is a rope and this rope is tied around the body and variety of positions are done. What we know is the modern history of Malkham started about 200 years ago, which comes as a very interesting story. In the court of Bajirao Peshwa in 1800s, there were 55 wrestlers. And there were two wrestlers, Gulab and Ali. They came from Hyderabad, winning at various places and challenged the court. Now, when they challenged the court, they were tall, they were hefty, and they were confident because they had won everywhere. Nobody in the court of Bajirao Peshwa, wrestling is the sport of Maharashtra. Nobody dared to pick up that challenge. And then there was the 16-year-old youth, Balambat Dada Devdhar, seeing the court's prestige at stake. He said, I'll take the challenge, but I need some time for preparation. And then he went to Nashik on the hills of Saptashrungi Devi. So it's a 7-hill area where there was a small, where there is still there's a small temple of goddess Saptashrungi. And as the anecdote goes, it is said that the goddess came in his dream and told him that the Lord of Strength and Exercise, Bajrang Bali, Lord Hanuman, or Maruti as we called it, he will come in your dreams and he will teach you some moves of Malkham. Now, it could be really Bajrang Bali came in his dreams, or it could be, there were a lot of monkeys because it was a dense jungle then. So seeing the monkeys moving up and down the trees, Balambat Dada exercised on a pole. And on the stipulated day, he came back. He had his first wrestling bout with Ali. And within no time, he defeated Ali. Now, seeing that Gulab did not stand also to play the wrestling bout, he ran away. So there came in Malla Kham. So Malla is a wrestler and Kham is a pole. And so for wrestling, the Malkham. And therefore, and then Bajirao Peshwa, he lost the battle with the Britishers and he was sent into exile at Kanpur. So en route, he took Balambat Dada with him, and wherever there was a wrestling akhada, because akhadas were very, very common and popular during those times, a Malkham was set. So Malkham is traditionally performed by boys and it is a pole Malkham. But during my times in 70s, I was aware in mirrors, there is one similar sports institution, Ambabai Talim Samstha. And Vaidya Karmarkar, who was the in charge there, he had 6 or 8 daughters. And he had taught this Kain Malkham to all his daughters. Some of these daughters are my contemporaries. So, when I started doing Malkham, I realized that, there are some other girls who are also doing it. It was interesting. It was very encouraging when we performed demonstrations. People watched it with awe, and never came a time where they said, what are these girls doing? These girls shouldn't be doing that. My institution has a long tradition because it was established in 1925 during the Britishers' time. And the Samsthapak of this institution, the founder of this institution, Vyayam Maharshi Prahlad Lakshman Kale Guruji, he at that time would teach not only Malkham but wrestling and variety of Indian martial arts using lathi kathi, because otherwise you couldn't train the youths. So also in my institution, the girls were allowed to come to do their exercises. So I belonged to a tradition, and therefore, although I was one of the first few, I think slowly and gradually the trend got set. And there were many girls who would come to practice Malkham in our institution. And then when canes became unavailable, it was substituted by ropes. So to do rope Malkham, again, we started getting a lot of students, and slowly and gradually, in 1980s, the competition for women Malkham started. Competitions give a boost to the sport. And I remember in my first competition, there would be hardly maybe 22 female participants. And now the number of girls is almost equal or sometimes more to that of boys. So, in a long way, the sport has come competitively and otherwise also.
Dr. Neeta, could you tell us more about the philosophy of Malkham and also the philosophy of Samarth Vyayam Mandir, that every athlete is a coach?
Yeah. This is very interesting. When Kale Guruji, he set up the institution, his motto was people should come here, people should learn exercise, people should become strong. Ours was an institution which has given support to the then freedom fighters. So during their exile, Bhagat Singh, Rajguru, they have come into our institution and have stayed. And to make the youth strong, initially the institution started with that. Kale Guruji was aware of the fact that if, a lot of money, wherever there is money, there is a chance that unwanted elements are likely to come in. He never took money for what he wanted to teach. There is again a very interesting story, I would like to tell the philosophy from there. There was a very rich person in his family. Somebody had become paralytic and not getting no improvement in spite of treatment. So the family member comes to Kale Guruji and says, Guruji, see, here is a member who is paralytic, and we hope that you will be able to look at him. Kale Guruji was an excellent massagist. Kale Guruji went to that person's house, which was in a rich locality in Malabar Hill in Mumbai, massaged the person morning, evening, and in a matter of few days, the person who couldn't turn in his bed, started walking. And then this Sheikh Mangaldas Verma, he was very happy. And then he asked Guruji, tell me, what are your fees? And at then Guruji said, see, I have got a small plot in one ground at Shivaji Park, and I want to build an institution there. You give me money to build an institution. I'm not expecting any personal remuneration for me. This tradition was continued. So when I joined Vamshala, My fees was only 1 rupee. Even today we charge only 30 rupees. But our expectation is whenever a student becomes little senior, and that little senior is according to our Indian educational standards, 10th grade, the student passes, he has to stand as a coach. The philosophy is when you teach, you learn better. When you learn better, you perform better. You know what are the expectations of your coach? When you coach someone, because you also develop an emotional bonding, you also develop expectations about performance, about the sincerity with which the student should perform. And that philosophy has worked very well for our organization. So we have class 1, class 2, class 3. So class 1 student who is 14-year-old teaches a class 2 student who could be 10, 11. A class 2 student teaches younger students. We have camps, and in our camps, our youngest teacher is 7-year-old, but it develops leadership qualities. It develops discipline. So with sports, all these allied aspects of sports develop personality. They develop human skills. And what is required in today's world is human skills, communication skills. So they come with the practice of sport. That's the philosophy of my institution. If I have to talk about the philosophy of Malkham, see, Malkham is a very basic sport, a mother discipline. It gives excellent exercise to the spine. It gives excellent exercise to the entire body. It's pull, it's push, it's flexibility, it's strength, but it also comes with a lot of grace. So you know how to do fine movements, you know how to do strong movements. And in order to do all these movements, you need to be very balanced emotionally. Emotionality, a control on emotions come in. Lot of yoga positions are done on Malkham. And therefore, yoga is associated with spirituality. Yoga is associated with calmness of mind. Malkham is associated with all this. And therefore, what we encourage is, after the age of 5, anyone can do Malkham. So in my organization, again, which is an exception, 80-year-old person also comes to learn Malkham. Visually challenged students also come to learn Malkham. And we train any person irrespective of gender, age, and any kind of challenge.
Neeta ji, going back to your rich academic background, what made you choose psychology for your doctoral studies? And could you tell us a bit more about your research into that area?
Yes. My brother, after his minimum that 12th standard, went for engineering. My parents always wanted wanted me to become a doctor. And by then, by the time I was in 10th standard, I was fully in love with sports. And then here, when you go in for science, it's very demanding time-wise. So I never wanted to do science. Then what is the option? And that was the time when, in my Vamshara, Deshpande sir got a magazine, Gymnast, from America. And that Gymnast magazine had article on sports psychology. And at that time, I was an avid reader. I would pick up any magazine and would read it. So I would pick up that Gymnast and would read it. If I understand it, if I don't understand it, but I would read it. And somewhere that word psychology had stuck me. I was not going to go in for science. That became definite. It became a huge conflict point in my family. But after all that fight, after my 10th standard results, I just sat at home and I told my parents, that was a different time then. You could just go to the college, pay the fees and take admission. 3 days I was just at home. Ultimately, my parents gave in. I went for arts. I took psychology. When in 11th standard I had taken psychology, I had not dreamt of, having this academic profile. But somewhere, in my mind, this was there that my parents always said, oh, we wanted a son to become engineer, we wanted a daughter to become a doctor. So somewhere, go doctor, aise man mein tha. As I started progressing in Malkham, then, went into full-time Malkham. And when foreigners started coming to our institution, all word by mouth publicity to learn Malkham, they would ask us about the benefits of Malkham. And we would tell the benefits. See, physically this happens, psychologically this happens. And we have had foreigners from, about 40, 45 countries, but the major population is from America. And America has a very strong research base. A small thing happens and you will find there is a research conducted in US. And these Americans would ask, kuch to research bol do, do you have any paper? Do you have any research? And, being in college where there is always a pressure to conduct research, that is one thing. And, this realization that we talk about the benefits and then we don't have any formal research in it, that prompted me to do research, combine my academics with my sports, which was also a dream fulfilling thing for my parents. I became a doctor. But my research is about obviously psychological benefits of Malkham. If I wouldn't have been in the field of sports, I always think I would have chosen neuropsychology as my area because the brain behavior always fascinated me. So this was one major area in my research to executive functions of the brain. So this part of the brain is frontal lobe, and this frontal lobe is involved in planning, goal setting. This frontal lobe is involved in problem solving. Okay, so which are the best ways in which you could go about dealing with the problem, and therefore good executive functions also indicate that there is a chance that, or a developed frontal lobe, the impulse control is good. So I wanted to find out that whether these are the benefits which one can obtain through the practice of Malkham. And then it was choosing a sample who did Malkham, comparing them with a sample who is not doing Malkham with the neuropsychological tests. So I studied executive functions as one area. The other area which I had chosen was emotional intelligence, because a lot of research in psychology shows that if you are intelligent, maybe you are not successful. But if you are emotionally intelligent, the chance that you are successful, you have a quality life increases to a significant extent. Also, because being in psychology, I knew stress and depression are two factors which are ruining the world, and they are the major concerns for mental health professionals. So is there anything which could probably be a protective factor? And therefore my third factor which I studied was explanatory style, which gives us a hope score, HOPE, hope. So in spite of setbacks, in spite of trauma, if I have a good hope score, I will always look at the positive side and say, okay, through this trauma, let me learn. So these are the three areas I chose in Malkham, and my entire research showed me that yes, the basic practice of Malkham improves the person in all these three areas. One thing which I found is if you are doing competitive Malkham, you may experience stress because there is a pressure to win. But if it is non-competitive Malkham, in spite of the fact that you are stressed, you show improvement in variety of parameters. And so I think this research has a huge practical application, because in today's world, one, stress is there. Second, depression in the pandemic conditions. So, the number of suicides, the number of aggressive behavior, abusive behavior, negative emotions increase. So you be in any scenario, but if you do Malkham, one question again you may ask, it could be any sport. Why Malkham? My answer to this is yes, any sport will give you a lot of benefits, but a sport which gives you maximum exercise in less time, because we all are time pressured too. Okay. See, in psychology, there are hundreds of stress management methods. With all these stress management methods, it is found that sports is an excellent means to deal with your stress because it attracts all the age groups. So sports is number one. Win that sport, I would say Malkhambh is number one. And you have to experience it, so you will understand it.
Neeta Tai, you have also learned gymnastics, and
Yeah.
you could have pursued a interest in gymnastics as well. Why
Yeah.
did you still stick to Malkhambh? Uh,
I don't know the logical answer to this question, but let me tell you, doing a lot of movements on a single row, I found that more challenging. That is one reason. The second reason, when you grow a little older, and then when you look back, then you start looking at the sports, then you start comparing the sports, and then one comparison which came at that time, that was an entry into let me tell you, a marriageable age. And that is the time when you start wearing saris. That is the time when you are going for a function, you wear a little bit of jewelry. Otherwise, being a sportsman, I never did that. But now you are entering into a different phase, and then you start understanding the importance of your culture. Some rituals are taught to you. You have to do this particular way, and then you probably start realizing that if you are the ones who would carry this forward, it will remain. So that was a juncture where I was teaching gymnastics also, where I was teaching Malkhambh also. There came a point where I had to make a choice in terms of time. And then I also was making a choice in terms of my culture. And then, it was a decision. Yes, it's Malkhambh.
Neeta Tai, family support plays a very big role in whatever you want to pursue. So, my question to you is, what message do you have for parents and coaches, so that women are empowered and women feel comfortable stepping into sports or extreme sports?
Yes, what you say is right. Unless there is support, things are going to be very difficult. Even when there is support, things are challenging. For the very obvious reason, you have to manage so many other things. What I realized being in the field of psychology also, psychology also speaks a lot about social support. And it says that you have to find ways by which you are going to get that support. So let me tell you, one, if your passion is very strong, if your passion is very genuine, people start respecting you, people start accommodating you. Okay. My parents encouraged me initially with the condition that we don't want your studies to suffer. So I knew if my studies suffer, this is going to be a tough task. So it also made me responsible. My studies never suffered. After marriage, my housework never suffered. So, I developed a time management skill where I would finish things so that I could devote a certain time to go to Amshara. I was also flexible. So was my institution in accommodating me. So it was a reciprocal thing. Later on, my family members also started realizing that her comfort level comes if she goes to the sports institution. So they also started accommodating me. I'll tell you one incident. My son, after the age of, because my Vamshala has the norm of taking the children into the institution at the age of 5. So at the age of 5, I enrolled my son to the Vamshala, and he fell for it, which also came as a huge advantage. So we would come together, he would be practicing, I would be practicing, I would be teaching, I would be doing administrative work. We would go home together. Once he was ill, and doctor had advised him complete bed rest. And I remember my friend Sushma from my college, she coming to my house telling me, my son was small, about 7, 8 years old. He said, Neeta, don't worry, I'll be with your son. You go to your sports institution and come back. I know you would be craving to do that. God bless her. But this is what people start realizing. And I'm really blessed, really fortunate to have all my relatives who know I have sports commitment. They make it a point to inform me if they are coming to my house. And then, it's an accommodating process. So I'm sure if the woman wants to become empowered, she needs to use her skills, her social skills. She has to be very genuine about it. And it's a give and take. So unless you are ready to sacrifice in certain areas, you're not going to get things in certain areas. So, there is a lot of personal sacrifice that you do in terms of, because now I have to manage a house, I have to manage my job, I'm working women. I have to spend time. So then I'm not going to be able to, watch a lot of movies and go out and say maybe parties and socializing. So I have to curtail that. I love to read, but I just make it a point to read few pages before I go to sleep, and I would love to finish the book in 2 days. So you also make a lot of sacrifices, accommodations. So does the world. If I want to give a message to the parents, I would give this message. See, initially, after I got married, then I had my son. My parents, especially my mother, was very apprehensive. And then she would ask that, is your sport the only thing which is giving you happiness? And I said, why not? And I said, sacrifice for what? At what cost? If I'm able to manage, if I'm able to convince my family, then why not sport? And then, even when I was 40, I was 45, I would wear that tight leotard, I would wear my tight slacks, which is now the things are changing. But, it was a time when I would wear that dress for my performances. And my parents, especially my mother, who was initially very apprehensive, gave in. So I think you have to be strong, you have to be consistent, you have to be persistent and manage.
Neeta, the traditional sports like Kho-Kho, Kabaddi, Silambam, they are quite widely played and practiced today as we see in schools and other institutions. In your view, what do you think it will take for making Malkham more accessible to people, especially in schools?
Number one, it is the trained coaches. Okay. One advantage of Malkham is it requires minimal space. You could have a small corridor in your school, a small place, a tree. If there is a backyard, you can hang a rope there. So in a place like Mumbai, where there is space constraint or any area, Malkham can come as an excellent option. But trained coaches is one major thing we need to look into. And we, through the International Malkham Federation, which has got established, the Vishwa Malkham Federation, we are developing a course for coaches. So formalized certification will happen. That is one major need. The second, a little drawback I would say is, see, when we talk of Kho, Kabaddi, they are team sports. So at a time, you can engage 15, 20, 25 people together. So if I'm having 1 hour class, everyone is moving, everyone is exercising. When I'm teaching Malkham, there is one child on the rope or one child on the Malkham. Okay. So individual sport have their own limitation in terms of, I cannot have a class of 30 coming to me and I can have 1 hour in which the student will hardly have one chance or two chances. So, we need to develop skills with maybe little more apparatus, or the exercise based in such a way so that children could do some skills on the ground simultaneously on Malkham. And basically, as I told you, that initial learning takes more time because it hurts. And so you really require a motivating coach who will be able to balance this pain and gain so that the child will remain in a sport. So I think a combination of all this, and obviously the management then, in spite of, a little slow go, they could encourage the sport.
I'm back. I think that was the end of our official questions, but I could tell from everybody's eyes light up in different moments that everybody probably has like 12 more questions for you. So I'm going to open for just one more follow-up if there's anybody who would like to. And then I have a question myself, but also a fun challenge, especially since it sounds like you're a little bit of an adventurer. So is there anybody that would like to ask a follow-up question? I was thinking Liz. All you, Liz.
Thanks, Rupal. Dr. Neeta, I was just wondering, I love your philosophy around being so inclusive of gender, age, ability, and that's part of your institution's, set of values, it sounds like. I was just wondering, do you teach that to your trainers or to the coaches as part of your training the coaches? Or how does it happen, I guess?
Yes, see, it happens very naturally in our institution because when you are a coach, it's not that you are going to teach only a specific bunch of students. You are a coach means you could be given very simple. So I have a 7-8-year-old boy, and an adult comes to me. I tell that adult that this 7-8-year-old boy is going to teach you the warm-up exercises. Okay. And therefore, my coaches know that they have to teach things to anyone and everyone. Generally, we also encourage a lot of informality in being around. So if I'm taking a class, so, there are kids who are coming, they are standing near me, they are watching how I teach. We encourage that a lot. And because it's a tradition in my institution, you will find when I tell a student that, okay, you have to go and stand for that class, the student just goes and teaches whatever he or she can. So it comes in. It comes in. We don't restrict it very specifically. I don't know, many times I know there is a very formal setting abroad that these are the 7 students, these 7 students are under this teacher. We never do that. So there is a lot of formality, but there is also a lot of informal setup where anyone and everyone is encouraged to be on the ground as a coach.
Liz and I both come from an ultimate Frisbee background, which has a lot of this ability to be hopefully this more informal, but also the spirit of the game that I think is represented by Malkham as well. Liz, I'm sure you'll have more questions, so I will encourage you to speak to Dr. Neeta Tatke maybe afterwards on your own, because I'm sure there's plenty of things to share and learn. This has been incredibly fascinating. I feel like both not only just the philosophy, but just your joy. There's something beautiful about how much you seem to resonate, because it does look a little bit difficult. I have to say, I every time I watched, and I've seen some even on some of these like fun TV shows, and I'm like, that's gotta hurt. I'm not sure, why, and how does one learn that? Because you've had to have fallen before as well, right? It's not like you just get up and you do it. So I guess my question for you is, for a youth generation who's really run by a lot of difficult and interesting circumstances, I don't even want to try to relate all of those. What's your message for them? Like, how would you relate what you've learned from Malcolm and from this like traditional sport to today's context for the many youth that are in India?
Yes, I would want to put forth this point that life is challenging. But if you want to meet these challenges, be on the pole. You will learn how to hit the challenge, because you will realize you go up. As I was telling earlier also, you do one move. You talked about pain. I have also talked about it. But, when you go there in spite of the pain and you do and, sit there as simple as this position, and you feel you are top on the world, that was worth it. I can face challenges. If I can do this, I can definitely handle that. I think that is what I will tell. Don't shun. Go into it. My message would be to the youth is, see, today's youth, in spite of whatever are the life's circumstances, they are very resilient. They want something different. They talk about the core strengths. So this is something which is going to give you the core strength, not only physically, but psychologically, also spiritually. It is going to make others wonder, hey, what this person is doing. Hey, this person did it. We have, I was very happy when you put it on the mail that one prize session is do Malkham. And when there are, we had one of our students coming in, and what she did was she gave a birthday party, and her birthday party was, you have to come and do Malkham. And these were her friends who were doing it for the first time. They did some positions, they clicked their photographs, they put it on the Facebook, and the reactions were, oh, wow, how did you do it? So, yes, it's challenging. Life is challenging. This is challenging. This is a fun challenge which will help you to deal with the challenges of life. That's a simple, you try it and you figure it out. I would just say that.
And we really do look forward to a group coming to Mumbai and learning Malkham from you and your team. And we're very excited to have you be one of our Goodwill ambassadors for this Femme-Powered Films. You really very much capture the essence and spirit of determination and grit, Indian women in sports. So thank you, Neeta Tai.
Yeah, thank you. I would just like to add a little more to my experience of Malkham. My Malkham took me to places. I traveled all over India. I have been to those places which, probably they are not very easy to go. We performed for our Indian soldiers, near the border of the country. An amazing experience. I have been to so many countries. My sport took me there. And, so there are so many added things that come with your passion. So it is not about only, coming, practicing every day, teaching, being in an institution, but it is interacting, it is being creative, it is being innovative. It is all ups and downs, and it is traveling a lot. So thank you so much. I really enjoyed this interaction with you all, and I'm sure one day I'll get an opportunity to meet you all in my Malkham class. So you all are invited at Sri Samartha Vyayam Mandir to come here and experience Malkham.